Someone made a response to my Invincible video that I wanted to go through and respond to. Also, don't go spamming his video in the comments. He clearly doesn't care about that sort of stuff, but I do. I don't want people harassing him. I'm not going to include his full video in this, I'm just going to pick the most relevant part, so if you want to check out his complete unedited video, go ahead. But don't go filling his comment section with shit like his merry band of fuckwits did with mine.
Guys, it was one filler episode. Seriously, it was one filler episode, and now apparently Invincible isn't working anymore.
I talk about this one episode and what it means for the show for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, with most of my points being about various parts of the show throughout its entire history, almost like this episode was just a tipping point that made me want to air out my problems that I have with this show. So yeah, one filler episode and Invincible isn't working anymore, if you're trying to immediately put some bad faith into the video to try and make yourself seem more credible.
As you can see, we have a video here from someone who doesn't really like Invincible too much, which is a shame because the latest episode was fire.
As I stated last time, which you left out of your video for some reason, almost like you cut out stuff that doesn't really help back your own arguments, there's still some good main story beats, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who are gonna love the Cold War stuff they've got going on for the end of this season and season 5. I most likely will enjoy it as well. I just know there's gonna be a bunch of other things added into it or changed that people will have a problem with. In season 2, 3 characters get killed off in a single episode, then it turns out that no, actually, each and every one of them are fine, nothing to worry about. With Kate, I don't particularly mind, she has another body somewhere else, whatever, but Ray gets every single one of her bones crushed and splintered inside of her body, and Rex has his hand ripped off and takes a point-blank headshot with lots of blood loss throughout, and then they're both just fine with no real lasting consequences.
Okay, no offense, but if you think there were no lasting consequences after that whole thing, then you were not paying attention. Ray getting her bones crushed literally made her retire from being a superhero altogether.
I was very obviously talking about the physical consequences of pretending to kill her off. There's other ways to make her retire besides faking out her death, breaking every bone in her body and then just making her have no long-term health conditions. They could have just had her be traumatized by seeing what happened to Rex and Kate and not want to be a hero anymore. They didn't need a third fake out death in this episode.
And Rex nearly dying was the jumpstart to him trying to become a better person.
Again, what physical consequences happened? What long-term impact does the bullet to the head deal him? Nothing. What impact does losing his hand deal him? Nothing. He has a new one by the end of the season. Again, they could have just traumatized him with Kate's death and it would have had the same effect.
By the way, I'm not really sure what the problem is with them surviving extreme shit.
I never said there was necessarily a problem with people surviving extreme threats. I said it was tedious that they baited 3 character deaths and then they're all still alive and walking around.
Rex especially, because his body was actually reinforced and cybernetically modified by the government, so it honestly makes sense he would survive stuff like that.
As stated in the image you show in your own video, he got some modifications to his forearms and he got some sort of machinery implanted in his nervous system. There's nothing explicitly mentioned about having cybernetic reinforcements going across his whole body. He certainly doesn't have it in his head considering he gets shot in it, and as shown in the show, enhancements are irrelevant in this situation because he did lose his hand and he did get shot point blank in the head and he suffered severe blood loss from both of them. These are catastrophic injuries that, again, you think would have a big impact, but no, they have no physical effect on him. Like I said, he just gets a new hand anyways and he has no problems with it. So it's just a fake out death in an episode that has another 2 of them.
Even then, you guys do know it's possible to survive a headshot, right?
I never disputed that. It seems like you want to focus on injuries instead of my main point.
I mean, it is very rare, but even in real life it does happen. I mean, Invincible isn't even the first media that does this. Isn't that literally how Kill Bill started? Also, that's not even counting the fact that Rex ended up dying later on anyway.
Again, nothing to do with my main point. Eve just gets her internal organs punched out and then she just becomes Super Saiyan with no build-up whatsoever.
Wait, no, there literally was setup for that. I mean, did you watch the Adam Eve special that happened before season 2 took place, showing the full potential of her powers, literally setting all this up to happen? You did watch that, right? Right?
Yeah, it shows that she's a lot more powerful than she actually thinks, and that she can heal herself and manipulate organic matter as well. At no point does it say she's so powerful she can raise herself from the dead and unleash nuclear blasts on people. As I mentioned in my video, this is kind of another issue that's brought over from the comics. Atom Eve is a very difficult character to write for, and they had the same problems there, but they could have adapted it better for the show, maybe put more limitations on or explain her powers better. Also, this might just be me, but if you're going to introduce something this powerful into the storyline, especially when it leads to the conclusion of one of the biggest fight scenes in the show, maybe you should have some sort of refresher scene for that, not just rely on a 30-second scene that got released like 2 years ago that has not been relevant since. How convenient that this Eve can do this, but the Eve that got her fucking neck snapped is just going to be a vegetable from now on.
This is a completely different version of Eve you're talking about from a whole nother dimension, which we don't even know the capabilities of.
She's called Atom Eve, and she's capable of reshaping matter using her mind, as we see in this fight scene. I think it's made pretty clear that this is just the same Eve in a different universe. Unless something is said to be different, I don't know why the assumption is that everything else must be different. Do I also need to question the powers and origins of Mark and Nolan? Or are we just going to assume that they've got a very similar history in the main timeline, just with some small differences that made Mark join Nolan?
If it's possible that some Invincibles throughout the multiverse are stronger or weaker than ours, as we saw in the Invincible War,
most of the Invincibles are weaker and they lose because they've never trained as hard or had to fight strong opponents, and the world has been prepared to fight them after what Nolan did to them. The universes they come from aren't fundamentally different. It's made very clear these are the same Mark as in season 1, just they had certain circumstances that made them join Nolan. And therefore, besides the Guardians and Cecil, they've most likely just been killing humans that aren't a challenge to them. You want to shock me and show me a change of pace? Well, how about when you have the strongest soup on the planet get attacked by a guy he could easily defeat?
Oh yes, the guy whose powers and tech were specifically designed to make him stronger the harder Mark hits him, which is why Mark explicitly says he's not gonna try and hurt him.
I know how your powers work. I'm not gonna fight you.
Or do you just not pay attention to the clips that you put on screen?
How good of you to cut the scene right before Invincible then proceeds to fight him. I guess with the power of editing you can glaze anything.
I'm sorry. I'm getting these people out of here.
Instead of having a big dramatic death battle that shows a mother and her child get disintegrated on screen for a really dumbass reason.
What about them dying the way they did was dumb? The whole point was that them trying to get revenge the way they did was stupid and negligent, and that's why they got killed. But, you know, he doesn't really elaborate on this, so just kind of complaining for the sake of complaining.
Yeah, I mean, my point is just complaining for the sake of complaining. If you ignore the opening part of this section where I talk about how tedious the shock value is all the time, why don't you just have Invincible end the fight instantly, which he should be able to do, and then you can just try and have him like emphasize with why Powerplex feels the way he does, showing that not all fights between a hero and a villain have to end in violence.
Well, Mark did try to end the fight instantly, and it didn't work because Powerplex was too consumed with vengeance. That was literally the whole point of his character story. Removing that would remove the tragedy aspect of Powerplex's character, which is why his story is so compelling to begin with.
Yeah, he does try and talk him down, but as seen in the clip you left out, he does fight him eventually. He gives up on talking and just decides to fight him, an opponent that can't really do a lot to him. I mean, in isolation, I do think this is a great part of Invincible, and as you say, the themes and messaging behind it is good, but this isn't shocking anymore. It's not like we haven't seen families get slaughtered on screen. This is just par for the course because Invincible relies too much on shock value, my original point, which you seem very eager to steer clear from so you can focus on other things I haven't even bothered to make as my point. In the comics, Ray is just some comic relief character and then he gets killed off early on and no one really cares that much. While in the show she survives, although in a really stupid way that I wish they did differently.
Oh yes, this was when you said the characters were fine with no lasting consequences, right?
And this allows her and Rex's character to be expanded upon and grow, making his death even more tragic.
And then you go and explain exactly what the fight's implications were and how they had lasting consequences. You can't make this shit up. up.
You really love looking at those trees, my man. Maybe if you could look at the rest of the forest, that would be great as well. So Mark comes across as very unreasonable for not wanting to work with him for just these two things.
Alright, listen, Loomar, you make a pretty good point. Mark was coming off as unreasonable. You could say somewhat of a hypocrite for lashing out at Darkwing after they saved him. But, hear me out. Given that every other character in this scene was criticizing Mark and telling him to calm down, perhaps maybe that was the entire point of the scene? I know, it's almost like the protagonist can be wrong sometimes. Maybe that's why the writers intentionally had every other character criticize him. Maybe that's why the writers intentionally had Cecil point out his double standards of thinking during their conversation. Maybe Mark was supposed to be viewed as somewhat in the wrong for lashing out like this. It's almost like Mark's not perfect.
No way!
Mind-blowing concept, I know.
The scene told me it's good, so the scene must be good. That's the argument. Like, yeah, the scene wanted Mark to be hypocritical, so it made Mark a hypocrite, regardless of how many brain functions it had to remove from him to make him jump to these conclusions. In the comics, because of the corruption from his powers, his own mental health issues, and the guilt of losing his mentor, Darkwing 2 just has a fucking breakdown and he starts killing anyone who he believes is a threat, even people who haven't really broken the law. Invincible isn't against him for killing criminals, he's against him because he ends up murdering innocent people on a whim, and obviously he would be pissed at Cecil for having him on the team.
Oh my fucking god, dude. The comic that you're showing literally shows Invincible telling Darkwing you were killing people who broke the law. Any law. You were killing people because you enjoyed it, which is the exact same thing he was about to do in the scene before Invincible intervened.
Okay, so again, he killed people because he enjoyed it. He justified some of the killings that they were breaking a law, but he was mostly just doing it because he enjoyed killing people, because the voices told him to kill people. He was paranoid, so he killed people. The law really didn't have that much to do with why he was killing. Perhaps if the show went out of its way to explain that these were criminals, or if these were innocent people, we might have more context into Darkwing's character, and therefore the significance of this scene might play out differently. But we don't, because like several other things in this show, they just changed or removed stuff for no reason whatsoever. Darkwing was a fucking maniac in the comics. There was no real rhyme or reason for what he was doing, he just did it. He was hearing voices in his head, which is why this moment and his redemption work so well. It shows that some people just need medication and they can be rehabilitated. You understand that if you don't really know another piece of media that's being referenced, you don't have to make a comment, you can just move on instead of guessing shit. I don't know, but to me that sounds a lot better than, oh, he doesn't have the same moral values as me, so therefore he's bad.
Again, the whole show wasn't saying that. That was coming from Mark's perspective, which is clearly meant to be flawed here. Do you just not understand how character writing works?
Character writing usually tends to be consistent, not just making your character become educationally subnormal to make drama happen. Hey, look, a character was made to be an idiot so a lot of drama and shock value happened. Almost like that's one of my critiques of the show. To a social justice warrior who knew he was a hero from the get-go but got annoyed that he would rather save lives than spend time with her. I mean, come on man, what the fuck were you guys thinking?
Okay, have any of you guys seen Amber in this season? Like, at all? Hasn't she been gone pretty much the entire season and barely showed up last season? This video is called Invincible Just Doesn't Work Anymore. Why are we talking about something that 1, happened 3 seasons ago, and 2, isn't even relevant to the events happening in the show right now?
Hey, he got me guys. From now on, you cannot talk about anything that happened in any other seasons of the show to demonstrate your points, or to give examples on something that continues to happen even in the latest season. You can only talk about season 4, and then after that finishes, you're only allowed to talk about season 5. The media guru has laid down his laws.
I also like how he just randomly brings up that she's a social justice warrior, like as if that helps at all with elaborating on why her character sucks.
Yeah, I don't bring up why social justice warriors are bad and annoying. You'll also never hear me explain why headbutting cacti and smearing shit on the walls is bad either, because it's pretty obvious why it's bad.
I mean, I'm not gonna defend her writing there, but it's just funny how Amber just lives in y'all heads so rent-free 3 seasons later. It's actually wild.
He got me again, guys. Remember, it was 3 seasons ago, so no one is allowed to talk about it or bring it up because he said so. Calling attention to a bad trope that everyone hates and then you continue to use it anyways doesn't make it a quirky, self-referential piece of comedy.
Actually, it does. literally by definition.
This scene plays it for comedy, yes. In literally every other part of the episode, it's played completely straight and it's just something that happens with their armor. Mark isn't constantly getting annoyed throughout the episode about it. There's never a scene where someone talks during combat and then that person gets hit in the head. It's just something that keeps happening and everyone just accepts it as normal. This one scene doesn't make the entire episode a self-referential comedy. You can't show me this guy being so strong he manages to defeat the Viltrumites all the other Viltrumites fear, and then have him get his ass kicked by a couple of ping pong balls shortly afterwards. That's fucking stupid.
Okay, so there's a lot to break down here. First of all, Invincible was not holding back at any point during his fight with Conquest. Conquest was literally just that strong. It got to a point where Mark tried to stop the fight because Conquest's strength was so overwhelming, which is why it's confusing when you're trying to make it sound like Mark beat the strongest Viltrumite quote unquote all by himself when he definitely did not.
This is fair. Oliver and Eve do help to distract him a bit and lay on a bit of hurt, especially later on when Eve kind of regenerates or whatever. But Mark does do the brunt of the work and ultimately he's the one who manages to kill him. He makes him bleed and destroys his hand and caves his skull in. I guess I should have focused more on how long it took Conquest to beat him down rather than Mark winning, considering that Conquest talks about how he hasn't been challenged in a fight for a very long time. So yeah, that was my bad. I should have focused on the endurance of the fight, not necessarily about how Mark was the one who won it.
And he sure as hell was not holding back against Dinosaurus. You had to have been watching a completely different fight if you think that was the case.
Invincible.
How nice of you to show the part where he stops holding back and not the part immediately before where he obviously was holding back and getting his ass kicked. In the comics, the reason for the black and blue costume isn't to point out how depressed he is. He's been plenty depressed in the classic suit. The point is that this starts his descent into anger and hate, emotions that bring him severely close to becoming like his father. Throughout this arc, he agrees he sometimes believes his dad was right and that conquering the human race might make things easier for Earth. He stopped showing empathy to people like Powerplex and is fully ready to kill him if he becomes a threat again.
If anyone else ever puts my family or anyone I love at risk, I won't hesitate to kill them.
The TV show choosing to add a scene at the end of the season to pretend like he's gone on his comic book arc doesn't mean he's gone on his comic book arc. Also, I mentioned how angry Mark was at Powerplex, an event that happened earlier in both the comic and show, and you play a scene at the end of season 3 that has nothing to do with Powerplex. What's that expression again? Bad faith? Also, now that I'm onto this, did you think my entire point here was Mark never gets angry ever? Of course Mark gets angry. Why the hell wouldn't he? The thing I'm pointing out was that Mark gets irrationally angry. He starts to get consumed by anger. Showing him getting angry after what Conquest did has nothing to do with my point, because literally everyone would be angry after what Conquest did. In fact, if you flip the colours of the suit, it makes him look like he's wearing red and white, kinda like the Omni-Man suit. Now this isn't actually intentional, as Omni-Man in the comics is actually red and blue, a very light blue. A blue so light everyone thought it was white and that the blue was just the shading and lighting. It's technically blue and this colour flip is just a coincidence, but it could have had actual meaning in the show where Omni-Man's suit is white and red. It could have been emphasised that he's becoming like the thing he swore he would never become.
I mean, I'm just gonna chalk this up to being a nitpick because I feel like the show has already done a good job hammering home the point of Mark slowly becoming Omni-Man without doing that. Like, this is not something that's absolutely needed, and here you are complaining that the show didn't do it, even though they did show hints of it in the trailer.
Do you really need me to explain how having something in a trailer and having something in the show itself are two completely separate things, especially as the trailer came out months before and people might have forgotten this little detail? And I mean, again, I've given plenty of examples that the show just cuts out or completely alters. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm literally waving pictures in front of your face, that's a you issue.
I don't even know what bro is yapping about at this point, but let's finish this off.
Instead, pretty much all of the characterization for Mark in this arc has been completely removed or changed to the point it doesn't have the same impact.
Not really, most of it's still pretty much the same.
Thank you for completely proving me wrong using all the examples in the show. Oh wait, you're not gonna do that, you're just gonna say they're the same. So if someone making a statement and then providing multiple examples to back that statement up is yapping, then what do you call a small statement that has no substance or examples? Because whatever the fuck you would call that, that's what your statement was just now. Even when he goes back to his classic colours, in the comics he doesn't take back the fingerless gloves, giving himself full gloves that resemble the ones Nolan wore, showing that despite his desire to be better and less grounded in anger, he's still got that dark side inside himself. In the show he's just got his fingerless gloves again. He's just back to his season 1 characterization.
What?
Yeah, I guess so. Mark's entire characterization about him not holding back and all that just gets completely thrown out the window because they didn't give him a new pair of gloves. Well, unfortunately, the latest episode proved you wrong because Mark fucking choked Conquest to death, so...
Yeah, Mark's characterization I was a bit harsh about, and I guess I should have redone this section considering I knew Conquest's death was coming in the next few episodes. I guess I just got annoyed that they got rid of the black and blue suit without really doing much with it. They toned him down quite a bit. There's so much stuff in the comics that they just didn't put on the screen for some reason. But yeah, this was a bad take, I'll admit to that. I should have tried to rehash it a bit to try and make it a bit more streamlined, a bit more concise so I get my point across. But yeah.
This video practically aged like milk in less than a day.
The stuff I said about Mark, yeah, that wasn't great. Again, I should have known considering the comic arc they're on, but the rest of my criticisms, Conquest chooses to rip Mark's guts out but not grab his heart and kill him, because seeing someone's guts get ripped out is more shocking. Shock value, you might say. Or Tech Jacket getting completely changed to the point where I question why they even got them in the first place. They take them in the comic because Tech Jacket was so powerful he killed 2 of the alternative Invincibles all by himself. But here, even when she's teaming up with Alan, she's pretty useless. Again, almost like they made a bad change, a change they did not need to do at all, just to add some more drama to the show and keep people interested on the shock value. So yeah, that was their video and my response to it. 1 or 2 genuine criticisms of my video that I should have reworked or explained better, and then there's just a bunch of mindless glazing, editing clips to remove what I was talking about, constant instances of bad faith and dismissing examples only to not bring any of their own to back up their counter arguments, and he's one of those people who seem to think that saying lil bro somehow makes their argument better. Like, seriously, what the fuck was your point here? How does saying lil bro and showing a clip from the very end of season 3 dismantle a point I made about a storyline from 2 episodes earlier? Yeah, not great. About the creativity I expected from someone who only reacts to other people's content and has their entire identity centered around another icon he also didn't create while making snide insults. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. Sharing always helps, and if you're feeling really generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. But most of all, I just hope you had a great day, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.